Hey, family. Wow, did I have a conversation with Marty Neumeier? I'm excited for you to enjoy. Marty is what some people might in the old days call a free thinker. Regardless, he is a king of branding and he's worked with companies like Apple, Netscape, Sun Microsystems. The list goes on right through Google and Microsoft. Enjoy this conversation with Marty Neumeier. Marty, welcome.
Thank you, Janice. It's lovely of you to invite me here.
Oh, goodness. Are you kidding? Don't be shy. I'm thrilled that you are here. You're the brand expert, and I guess we can jump right into it. Marty, what is brand?
Well, there's been a bone of contention about this for a long time. So that's my contribution to the field is I defined brand in a new way. Not as a logo or, corporate identity or advertising or anything like that. A brand is a person's gut feeling about a company, a product, or a service. In other words, the brand lives in customers' heads and their hearts. It doesn't live in the company. It's not even totally created by the company. It's created by customers and potential customers when they see the stuff that you're putting out.
So you flipped it inside out. Really, you're saying the company doesn't own the brand; it's the customer who owns it. And I think I'm kind of relating to it a little bit. This may be a very flimsy interpretation or parallel. But Marty, when I think about brands, let's say I won't call a name here, but there's a very popular leather brand in women's bags, and because I have friends in all spectrums, I see women who carry this one particular brand of bag, and women in one community love it because of its quality, its durability. They buy one and they stick with it. Women in another community buy it because it's logoed a certain way and it does something for them or how they see themselves when they carry it. Is that verging around where
Oh,
brand lives or doesn't live?
you're really close on this one. Yeah, the brand is a way for people to embellish their identities. Really, I mean, if I buy that product or if I use that service, what does that make me? That's the question that everybody's asking, even if it's not conscious. They are joining a tribe. They're looking for their tribe. So
Mm.
if it's a certain fashion brand, that's the tribe they want to belong to, and they feel a connection with other people that buy that product or that products from that company, so it has a value above and beyond the value of the actual product, which is very true in fashion, right? Because the cost of making a lot of fashion products isn't very high. You're paying for something much more than that.
So one product, one one logo may cost the same thing to produce and distribute as another product and with a different logo, but the brand, the interpretation and the relationship a customer has to it is what's going to set the
Oh,
price.
that's exactly right. Yeah.
Okay, well then does everybody and everything have a brand?
I kind of draw the line at people. I don't think people have brands; they have reputations.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that's come upon us in this highly digitized age where social media impacts us in different ways is that we do start to think of people as having brands and we respect or pay them based on what we think their brand value is or their voice value is and
I
blur
mean,
that line. And we blur the line.
if you are the business, you're a personality of some sort. You're an influencer, or you're the whole company.
Mhm.
So you could probably say you have a brand. I think it's dangerous for people to think about it that way because pretty soon you start separating your actual personhood from your brand. And you start to split from you start to pretend to be somebody you're not because you're trying to be successful. And I think that's pretty dangerous for people. And you see a lot of people getting in trouble that way. And a lot of young people getting online businesses going where they haven't even discovered who they are yet. And they're already creating some fake persona that
Yeah.
works with their audience. And they have to keep feeding that. And it gets harder and harder over time because people move on, right? And so you're desperately trying to hold on to your audience. So you've got to be more extreme all the time. It's a rough way to go. I don't think I'd want to do that. But there is an allure to it because it's like, hey, I can be my own boss.
Or
But
I
that's
can
not,
create this person who I really am not.
yeah, I can, and I'm doing it for my audience. It's not for me. Trust me, it's just for them. I'm making them feel good, or I'm making them feel better about themselves. And, all that's laudable, but it comes at a toll. You have to pay a toll for that. And eventually it could ruin you. So, it can ruin your whole personality. I mean, you could just disintegrate the way I look at it. But it's not the work I do. I'm not. I don't do much with personal branding. It's because the real struggle is getting corporations or any kind of business, even a small business, to present themselves as if they're a single entity. That is really hard work, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
if you're a solopreneur, if you have your own business, it's all up to you. You can do whatever you want, and if it works, that's fine. But trying to get a whole company to present the company as something meaningful, right, and aligned with itself, that's hard. And so that's where, for me, that's where the work is.
So Marty, some of our family will recall Richard Branson and how the
Hmm.
Virgin products, the Virgin services identified under a brand. Um, and you've written some of the most respected books on branding, including a dictionary of sorts. You've just told us that brand is not a logo, but a result or a gut feeling, I think you said, and that we have to consider the brand from the customer's point of view. When we look at that, then customers related Virgin to who Richard Branson was in some ways, or on a different level, think about like we create a an entity or a presence like a Marie Callender's or a Mrs. C's or that kind of thing.
Hmm.
How do we understand the differentiation? I guess talk more about this in a way
Well,
that you want our family to see it as we
well,
continue
I
on.
think Richard Branson is an interesting study because he has a personal brand, but it's actually a CEO brand.
Hmm.
So he's the face of the company. And it works pretty well because he likes to dabble in different businesses. So if a corporation tried to dabble in different businesses, they would really
Mm,
have quite a
mm,
number of brands, right? Because the rule of thumb is one brand per product or one brand per company. You can't have a million different brands. In other words, a million different understandings about you and keep it together, right? Because people will just be confused all the time. So Richard Branson does it by putting himself out there in front of all the different companies. But there is a kind of Richard Branson feeling about all these companies that holds them together, and I would call it sort of a fun irreverence that he brings to all his entrepreneurial efforts, and that's fairly unique. So he's passed the first test of any brand, which is to be different.
yeah.
If you're not different, you have nothing to build on. But let me also say that being different is not enough. You can be different and bad. That's easy. A lot of companies are different and bad,
Right, right.
but that's instant death for most companies. So you've got to be different. Got to stand out some way, but you also have to deliver benefits, and they can be emotional benefits or anything, product benefits, efficiency benefits, anything. But you have to have those things in addition to being different. If you're not different, then what you're going to do is you're going to end up lowering your prices because you're competing with someone that the audience sees as very similar, right?
Mm, mm.
So you don't want to be similar.
Mm.
You can do it if you have one or two competitors that are similar. It sort of depends on what industry you're in, but typically you don't want to have any competitors. You
Because
just
then you're
don't.
marketing price, you're not marketing
You have to lower your price to win.
okay.
And so,
Okay.
whole idea of branding is to not lower your price, is to make a good living at it, a fair living, but not have to keep fighting off competitors by having price wars. That's a sign that you're in trouble. That your brand is in trouble.
So, what are some examples of brands that, then, in your opinion, have successfully embraced simplicity in their branding and how it has translated into their market success?
My poster child for a good brand, a good all around brand, is Apple. I think they've done a marvelous job right from the beginning. A little bit confused in the beginning, but they found uh, they got their rhythm, especially when Steve Jobs came back. But he'd already set the tone for it before he was thrown out of the company. And then when he came back, he had a lot more experience. He was a more mature person, and he was able to really go fast with Apple and build it into the most valuable company in the world at one time. I don't know who that is now, but let's just say that Apple is right up there. And I think probably 60 to 70% of their value is in their brand. It's in nothing. It's in a perception. It's in that gut
Mm,
feeling.
mm.
And I've
Well,
seen this play out for them so many times, and just the amount of money they can charge for relative to how much the products cost to make.
and launching ideas before you have products. That's something that I noticed, is
Hmm.
that you can launch an idea before a product. That's when that brand is really solid, and I
Yeah,
think exemplifies what you're saying. It's the eye of the customer.
it's all about the customer. The customer creates the brand in their minds, and because it exists in the mind of every individual customer, you may have a lot of brands, right? You think,
Yeah,
right? You could have a
yeah,
million
yeah,
people and a million brands, a
yeah.
million customers, but typically, if you're doing a good job, you get a lot of those people to see it in pretty much the same way, and that's how you know you're doing a good job, when you get almost everyone to understand who you are and what the value is, even if they don't buy it. They just say, "Yeah, I understand it. That's not me.
Mm-hmm,
I'm not
mm-hmm,
in that audience. I'm not
mm-hmm.
a customer for that, and that's fine." You can't be everything to everybody. That's the worst way to think about business, is trying to do that. You want to be very specific about the customers you want to serve, and then you want to think about them in terms of what you can do for them, not what they can do for you. And this is a big mistake that companies make. They first think about, like, what do we want to sell and how much money are we going to make? Let's whip up a business plan and see how we're
What
going to
did
do,
John
how we
Kennedy
can extract money from our customers.
like John Kennedy, right? Ask not.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Exactly.
Well, what are some
So it's
practical steps then, Marty, that businesses can take to audit and assess the effectiveness of their current branding strategies if they see need to change?
I mean, there's metrics you can use. I've got many of them in my books. I use very simple metrics because I don't believe in really complicated, perfect metrics. I think it's not very helpful to analyze what's going on now or what went on last year. You
Mhm,
really have to understand what's going to happen next year and the year after
mhm,
that. So the way you find out about that is you continually innovate, and you test your innovations with audiences to get some sort of feedback on how it's going to be received. So going back to Steve Jobs, he's famous for saying we never test products, and he uses the famous Henry Ford quote: "Is if we ask people what kind of cars they wanted, they would say faster horses."
yeah, yeah.
So that's not exactly true for Apple, and I have worked with them for quite a number of years. They just didn't test in a normal way. They tested kind of in a seat of the pants way, where they would make a product and quietly show it to friends and other people that they imagine we're part of their audience, and they use that to keep. They use that feedback to keep improving the design. So they thought of it as a design tool rather than an assessment tool. And that's where a lot of companies make a mistake. They take something and they test it, but it's finished. It's not. And so what happens is they don't get any information back that really helps them improve it. So I like testing that helps you improve the product or the service while you're creating it, right? You want to see how you're doing. You want to see what's going to happen before you launch it.
So this is very anti, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, if it ain't broke, fix it anyway.
Yeah, because if it's working, how can it work better, right?
Yeah, how can it work better? How can it keep working? It's the world is always moving. It's like a river. It's always changing. You can never step in the same river twice. So you have to keep assessing your audiences. Competition changes. It gets tougher when you get successful, right? People jump into your thing and they start copying you, which isn't always a bad thing. It can be a good thing, but it depends. So you really need to kind of always be understanding where your audience is going. And luckily, we have this thing called social media that lets us do that really easily. So we can keep tabs on whatever everybody's thinking. It's no secret. You don't have to have any spyware to do this. You just go and look at what people are saying. And often you'll see something they're saying like that suggests that there'd be a feature you could add or a feature you could take away or a price difference that might matter or another product where you could branch off into something similar. Or if you watch people, how they behave with your products and you find that they're having to change something about it or do something to make it work for them, I don't know, they're taping a dial down that tends to move if you touch it. So you're going, well, wait a minute. We could design that in so the dials aren't moving every time you walk by or something. That's a terrible example. But you see people all the time buying products and then doing funny things to them.
Right.
Because
and you can go
doesn't quite work.
You go online and find people actually sharing hacks to get something to work differently.
Oh, there you go. Good example. Yeah. Check how many hacks are there. So every hack is an example of failed design in some way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
well, Marty, let's talk about zagging, because your ideas about zagging have challenged traditional notions of for differentiation, really. Elaborate on the power of zagging, what it is and how it can set companies apart in this very modern crowded place that we live in called the globe, right?
Yes. Well, it is differentiation. There's no difference. You can just call it differentiation. But I think where companies go wrong is they don't differentiate enough. They think a little change from what the competitors are doing is a lot. For them, it seems big because they're so close to the work, to the product, to the service, that they think that their product is much different than customers think it is. So you really have to exaggerate that difference. You have to take it to the max without losing what makes it good. So again, I hate to say, oh, just be different, go out and be different. I mean, that's kind of dumb advice. There's always two things you have to balance. And the other thing is it also good? Is it good different and not bad different? So you find out that by knowing that there is a difference. Start with that. And then you test your prototypes and you find out what people say. If you have a product and you show it to people and they say some good things and some bad things, the tendency is to say, oh, let's go fix those bad things. We don't want them to say anything bad about it. That's not really the way it works. So because they say something bad about it, maybe it shouldn't be fixed. Maybe it's part of it. So let's take an example of, I think most people know the Aeron chair made by Herman Miller. It was a big success. It became so successful, it became 1/3 of their income was from this one chair. And they make all kinds of furniture. huge,
I have a
complicated.
desk. The desk is so big, Marty, and so heavy that we left it in the office that it originally was in. Because, well,
It
let me
was
stop because it's a beautiful desk and a well-made desk. It
so
just
it's
was a monster of a
so it was
desk.
part of a Herman Miller office system or something, right?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Was it one of the rosewood ones?
It
Yeah,
was
they had
not
the.
rosewood. It's a huge, huge oak.
Okay, well, see, and that's how
That
they made all their
started
money.
heavy, right?
It started heavy, the heavy idea. So
Hmm.
yeah, so this one chair was just so successful that it just put everything else in the shade. Now, when that chair came out, I don't know if you can picture it, but it's all chairs look like that now. I mean, they have sort of that netting in the back, and they
Yeah.
have this odd shape with a lot of little levers and things, and it's all about comfort, so that you can sit in your office chair instead of 8 hours, 16 hours a day, and be productive. And so this caught on with all the programmers, in the world back in the 80s.
Hmm.
So, but when they built that chair, they prototyped it and took it to test, and people hated it. Well, they loved it in some ways. They said this is the most comfortable chair I've sat in, but it's just so weird looking. It's just ugly. I don't think I could have it in my office. I don't want. It looks like I'd have a dentist office or something instead of a real office. I like my padded leather chairs. So it didn't take off right away. They could have said, "Okay, scrap it. We're making a leather chair," but they understood the market well enough to know that anything innovative takes time to sort of sink in with people, right? So the way it happened with Herman Miller is no one bought the Aeron chair except for, say, architects who had big offices and had to seat people, and they understood the trade off between utility and aesthetics, right? They said, well, yes, it's an ugly chair if you don't consider how comfortable it is. I mean, they've done wonders here with it. Like, it really works for you. And they also knew that in time, something that works well becomes beautiful, right? Because people start to understand why it's that way. Oh, it looks like that, so it can do X. So the first thing that happened is the architects bought it, loved it. That kind of became a symbol of success in the architectural business. And then architects like to get their offices in magazines, right?
Architectural
Because
Digest, remember?
architects, and here's your office. Is like, and then people, ordinary people who like design would look at those and go, "Wow, those are weird," but those are architects buying those, so that must be good design. There must be something I'm missing, and slowly spread like that. And I would say within a year or two, it just took off. Everyone knew that the chair was super comfortable. It looked that way because it had to look that way, and it was done by a couple of really great designers. Therefore, it must be great design. That's how people think. They don't
Athletic
necessarily.
shoes really took this principle forward because some of
Oh,
the most
yes.
popular were not considered beautiful. Remember when athletic shoes had a slimness to them and you weren't walking on the moon every time you
Yeah,
put
that's
them
right.
on?
Those are gone.
Yeah,
Yeah, so that's because of function.
yeah,
Someone
yeah.
figured out something else, and then they just tried to do what they could aesthetically with it. And if designers are good, they can build aesthetic elements into it that in time will look good. They could also make
Hmm.
something that will never look good,
Hmm.
and sometimes those can sell too. So,
Hmm. Well,
people always go ahead.
let's move a little bit because early in your career, you moved from Santa Barbara to Palo Alto. And you said that you just picked up the phone and started making calls to get your clients. This, by the way, Marty, is very much how we grew our business from infancy at Apple One. Now, many are familiar with the term stage fright, and
Mm,
most experience phone fright these days, especially since we're so
yeah.
digitally connected, um, but also in
Well,
life.
I just think even when telephones were the only way you could really get a hold of customers or clients, it was still scary. I mean, I can remember having to do this to support my, keep my firm busy, keep my studio busy, having to call up people I didn't know, people who were more powerful than I was, who had already had people they were working with and didn't need me probably. And I remember really kind of sneaking up on these prospects and like finding out everything I could about them. So that wasn't just totally cold calling them, going to trade shows to see if I could meet them a little bit first. And even so, I would, my hand would sort of rest, over the phone and start shaking when I had to put it back down. I can't do it. I can't do it.
And then, that was before you could see people on the phone, right?
Oh, it was before. And people were busy and they didn't want to be called. You were just like an interruption in their day. So I had to figure out how to, what I was going to say, but also just to not take it personally, But I think the main thing that really got me warmed up about cold calling was understanding that if I had the right thing to say, it was going to be a warm call. And some of that's just luck, I mean, if they're not looking, if they've got no projects going, they're not going to want to talk to you, period. And you've just interrupted them by accidentally getting them to pick up the phone. But I would, once I figured out branding and differentiation, then I had something very, very powerful to talk about. And so the first time I was really successful with cold calling is when I could call up and let me back up and say, we had changed the focus of our company so we could brand ourselves better. And what we picked to focus on was software packaging. So that's the cardboard packages that software used to come in, and you'd have to go to a store and there all these boxes would look like a bookstore or something. All these boxes would be lined up. And all you had to go on was the box. You didn't know how the software worked, and nobody wanted to really give you a demonstration of it. So you had to kind of figure it out by reading everything on the box. Well, we realized that was a real challenge for companies to figure out how to sell software with a box. Just a box, right? Just a cheap box. Cost $1 to make the box. But they're selling the software for $150. So we figured it out. We were the only ones who knew how to do it. And we knew how to do it because we adopted the idea of testing with every package we designed, we'd test 3 or 4 or more variations in the store with real customers who are shopping in that actual category. And we would talk to them, and it was not anything tricky like eye tracking or, it didn't have huge numbers like we tested 1,000 people or we did focus groups or any of that. That's, to me, is all nonsense because it doesn't help you do your job. What we did is talk to people and find out, which of these packages on the shelf did you see first? And if they pointed right to one of ours, we knew we were doing well. When we took on Apple's software, we got that over and over again. People would walk into the store and we say, look at that whole wall. Which of these software packages pops out at you? And they would point right to one of the ones we designed, say that one. Wow. That was so powerful. But that's only the first step, being seen in a store. Then you have to convince people that this is the right one. So testing did that for us. And then I could call up people and say, we don't know each other, but I know that you're in software publishing. And all we do is work with software publishers. That's what we do. And we've done this one, this one, this one, this one. The timing may not be right, I'd say so, but just wanted you to know that we have a slide presentation. This is one of the actual slides, film slides.
Right.
We have a slide presentation called 22 Ways to Sell More Software. And I would love to share that with you and your team anytime you're ready for it. And we can show you how we did it, how we had all the success with these other companies. And sometimes they'd say, well, I'm not doing that. I'm in a different position now, but I'll recommend you to somebody else. Or they might say, well, we don't have anything going now, but we'll keep you in mind. And often they did. But most of the time, I would say 2/3 of the time, I'd get a response like, oh, okay. How about next Tuesday? Would 2 o'clock be okay? 2 o'clock is all right? I say, I can make that. And how many people can we have here? That's when I knew I was onto something. And I'd say, as many as you like. And fill an auditorium if you want. Oh, good, because I think we have about 20, maybe 30 people that want to see this because their livelihoods depended on this, getting this right. In fact, after a while, you couldn't even get your software product into a retail store unless you had a good package. And often that meant it had to be done by our company because we'd test in the stores and all the people that worked in the stores would know us. And they would say, if you want to get into the store, write our names down, talk to this guy. And then when people do that, of course, then the price goes up, supply and demand. So we became really competitive in price and every other way. I mean, we competed with some of the biggest design firms in the world because we had a specialty. So that's what I'd like to tell people. If you want to compete with big companies, you have to go narrow, as narrow as you can.
A lot of our family listening are entrepreneurially minded,
Yeah.
and many of them may be pursuing careers in design or branding. So, your success through specialization is an important lesson to teach. Can you walk us through some of your career milestones from the angle of specialization and why this is so important?
Yeah. I can, because it was a big thing for me to learn this stuff, and I'm so glad that I was able to share it with my books. Luckily, I know how to write, and it's part of one of my skills. So I was able to.
Yeah.
I'm one of a lot of people are very good at their work, especially in the artistic realm, but they can't tell you how they do it. I mean, they're just sort of naturals. I'm not. I had to think about everything I ever did. So I'm very aware of what I'm thinking about while I'm doing it. So first I learned how to be a
That's a
graphic
gift to us that you're able to share.
Well, that's why I finally realized this, this is something I could share. So when I started out, I went to art school. I went to Art Center in Los Angeles. And that was a great experience. I got out and I accidentally found myself in a specialty by default. I decided I didn't want to go to New York. I was too afraid. I was really young when I was the youngest student at Art Center, and when I got out, I was probably 20, and all my peers were 25 or 30 by this time, and they were moving to New York.
East Coast, West Coast.
Yeah, well, it's because that's where the design business and the advertising business really is big time there, right? And it was starting to happen in California, but if you were serious, this is what your teachers would tell you. If you're serious, you'll go to New York. And I'm going, well, I am serious, but I'm not going to New York. I am not. I love my life here on the West Coast. So I'm gonna try to make it work. So, and then to make it even harder on myself, I decided I wouldn't be in LA where there was a lot of work. I decided to move to Santa Barbara, this little town that I really loved. And try to make it work there. So by accident, I found myself in a situation where I had a specialty. I was a designer in a town that had no designers. Okay, I was actually the first person to call himself a graphic designer in Santa Barbara, and which was great for differentiation, but it didn't make it easy. Then I had to tell my story to everybody who had a business that I thought could afford it. Like, this is why you should spend all this money that you weren't spending before, so that you could get some result that I had to be able to explain. And I think I did okay. Looking back, it was probably pretty pathetic, but I did get work. I got work in Santa Barbara, and I started getting work in other towns that didn't have a lot of designers in them. So one of my biggest clients was from a little town in Minnesota. So it was possible to bring clients there. But as the only graphic designer in Santa Barbara, I did have the field to myself. And so I could do all the fun things I like to do. I could do advertising and trademark design annual report design and signage, whatever I want, menus, whatever I wanted to do, I would still be the only one doing it. Right. So the problem is there's just not a lot of money in a small town. So at some point, I had to make a living. I had to put my daughter through college eventually, and I just knew it wasn't ever going to happen in Santa Barbara. So I was going to move, and I thought about New York, and I thought about London. I thought that would be fun. And then I discovered Silicon Valley. So this was about 1980, 81, I think. Computers were just starting. Personal computers were being invented.
How did you discover Silicon Valley? They came into your radar, or you deliberately?
A couple things. My brother was an accountant at the time, and he had a company that was making personal computer consoles, like a whole desk with a computer on it, everything built in, like a Magnavox computer system. I'm sure no one knows what I'm talking about. Univacs. So I thought that was amazing. Wow, that's great. Anybody, like one person, could have their own computer. And he says, yeah, but there's companies in Silicon Valley doing it. Have you heard of Apple? I said, no, that sounds crazy. Yeah, they're doing one too. And Atari. And I got to work with his company doing some work. And then there was a trade show in Santa Barbara for computer companies. So they took over I can't remember, it's where they have all the horse shows in Santa Barbara, but they have a big open building, and they had tables in it, and all the computer manufacturers are in there. And I think there were about 7 computer manufacturers. This is like, just brand new, really. But one of them was Apple Computer. And so I got to look around and everything, and I saw the demo of the Apple Lisa, which is like a Macintosh, but I think it was full color, had lots of graphical interface stuff happening. It was most of it didn't work very well, but it just blew my mind. And I just said, forget London, forget New York. I'm going to Silicon Valley. I'm going to get to meet this guy, Steve Jobs, and I'm going to work for him because this is amazing. And they need design. They love design. I can already tell they love it.
Yeah.
But I can play a part in that. And so my wife and I and our daughter and all our dogs and cats and birds and everything, we moved up to Silicon Valley. It was very difficult to leave Santa Barbara and very difficult to get settled, just make the move. But it was instant success. And the reason was, see, I am going to make a point here.
I'm loving it. I'm loving it. Are you kidding?
That I knew enough that I knew I had to be different in a bigger marketplace. So you got all these people who know probably a ton about technology, and there's a lot of designers making a lot of money already from these big companies. I'm just going to be another one. They're not going to know about all my awards or the quality of my work or anything. None of that's going to matter. So how am I going to get a foothold? Why are they going to choose me instead of somebody else who's been there a long time and who they have a relationship with? So I figured it out, and I figured out what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop doing every kind of work. Take that back. I'm going to stop talking about every kind of work that I do that's not technology. And I'm just going to be the technology guy. I'm going to be the technology designer. And my story is going to be technology needs a voice. Technology needs a face. There has to be a vocabulary if we're talking about this stuff, if you want to sell it to real humans.
Brilliant.
Right? And nobody else was talking about that. And the other designers that I was competing with really didn't even want to be working for these companies. They just liked the money. They really wanted to work for the museum in San Francisco or something very traditional for graphic design. And I said, I'm not doing that. I may do that, but I'm not going to put that in my portfolio. I'm going to do technology company after technology company. I'm going to figure it out. I'm not technological at all myself. That's why it took so long to get online with you today. I have no
And it
sense of
was
technology.
well worth the wait.
Thank you. So I had to fake it a little bit, but also just open my mind and start learning about this subject that I didn't know much about. But this is all I'm doing. So I definitely could focus on it. And it worked pretty well. And then what I discovered was these companies that are all in technology, I was hoping they would talk to each other because they're all in
Mhm.
technology. And one of them would say to the other, have you used this guy, Marty Neumeier? I mean, he's a fabulous designer. He's got the studio. They did wonders for our company, blah, blah, blah. Well, I found out that they don't talk to each other. They only talk to each other in their sliver, their niche.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
hardware companies talk with hardware companies, and software companies talk with software companies, and and chip companies talk with chip companies. So you've got to be narrower than that. And I thought, okay, this is going to be great, but I have to figure out which one of these appeals to me, which one I could really sink my teeth into. And it became software packaging.
Mhm.
I've never done a
Mhm.
package really in my life, a serious package that with testing and that had to pull its weight in the marketplace. I had to figure all that out. But
Mhm.
I started to realize that that's a kind of packaging that I would love doing because it's very abstract. It's very cerebral. You have to describe what a product does and what it is visually right away. You have to name it possibly, and I like that. You
Yeah.
have to sell it, which means the back of the box is going to be like a long copy ad for the product. It's going to have specifications that have to be perfect. There can't be any mistakes. It has to stand out on the shelf. It has to stand out on the shelf if it's turned sideways like a book. All these things we figured out and we tested them and we honed it until we had the look. Everybody said the look, the Neumeier look. Well, the Neumeier look was just very practical. It was just figuring out what's the minimum that you need to sell this product, and so that you can focus on what's important,
Oh, that
which
lines so much with what Apple does because they have a very, I wouldn't, I'm shy to use words and not be, an expert in the area. So when I say minimalist, I think, design in a home kind of thing, minimalist, but they are very, very precise, but it's a soft preciseness. It's a welcoming preciseness.
it's
And it
friendly.
sounds
Yeah.
like that's from you.
It was from me, but I wouldn't say that it was entirely from me because when Apple really got in gear with Steve Jobs in the beginning, he hired a firm called Chiat Day,
Hmm.
advertising firm, and they came from the aesthetic of the Volkswagen commercial, of Volkswagen ads, which were a lot of white space,
Yeah.
very minimal typography, very friendly
Hmm.
tone, a little bit of humor. And they sort of riffed on that. And they came up with what I thought was the right look for Apple, which is a lot of white space,
Hmm.
not a lot of copy. Let the product speak for itself. Show how beautiful the design is. In the case of the little Macintosh, it was cute, so show off that cuteness, and don't get tricky. I mean, it's just keep it really really simple. Well, by the time I got to do the software for Apple, Steve Jobs was gone. His influence wasn't there anymore, and all there was the internal design team, and they started tripping all over themselves and were trying to make their software packaging look corporate because they were getting killed by Windows, and who stole the whole idea from Apple, but they were succeeding wildly by going after a corporate market, and corporate people were saying, "Oh, I would never buy an Apple product. It's for families and artists and things like that." So they had to compete with
Hmm.
that. So they went overboard and they made all their packaging look very technical, like really technical with pictures of people working in an office and all this kind of stuff and screenshots on the front of the box. So like, this is what the screen looks like. Oh my God. Please don't show the screen unless you can design the screen, but that's what they had. So we came along and tried a lot of things, but the one that was super simple I mean, I could tell you about I remember the presentation like it was yesterday. It was so thrilling. In fact, I'll try to make a short story of it. So
I love it. I love it.
we went in to talk with the president of the software division. The division is called Claris. They separated it. And he's a great guy, but I didn't know him. And he ran the company fairly democratically. And so whenever they made a decision about something like design, they get the whole company involved, like over 100 people to vote on things.
Whoa.
Which makes it hard. So we came in with 17 little mock-ups this big. So they're like 2.5 inches high. We always kept them small so that, well, they're charming for one thing, but also you can't see too much. You can't pick it up and read it. You just get a sense of what it's like from a distance. So we brought in these little mock-ups, all different. We said some corporate looking ones, some really arty ones, and so forth. And we set them up in a big conference room on a window ledge, set them all up, and everybody filtered in from the rest of the company, and they all voted their choice. I want this one, or their top 3 or something like that. Okay, and then the real presentation with the CEO was at 4 p.m, and we'd been there all day just listening to all these comments, which is useful, but not that useful. So he comes in, and everybody gets quiet. There's about 15 people in the room. Most of them are marketers. And he comes in and he's shakes my hand. He's a happy guy, says very excited, see what you've got. And I said, we don't do the normal thing where, we present things one at a time and we try to sort of lead you to a conclusion. We're just going to put them up there as if you're a shopper and you're in the store and you're looking at all these. And here they all are. So he said, okay, great. And he comes in close and looks at each one, gives it, a few seconds, and then he gets to the end of the line and he turns around to me and he says, I don't like any of them. And we've been working on this for 2 months, right? To get to this stage where we had 17 and not 80 or something like that. So, and everyone got quiet, like nobody said a thing after that. And so I just waited, I nodded, and I said, okay, let's try a thought experiment. He goes, okay. I said, go back over all of them again, look at each one, and take out the ones you really hate, just the ones you hate. Okay, so he goes and he starts flicking them off the shelf onto the floor as he's walking, and he's left with about 5, I think. And he says, you know what? That was a good exercise because after I got rid of the ones that really, now I'm not in the hate mood anymore. I'm in the appreciation mood. And these are actually pretty cool. And everybody starts breathing again. And so now we're on a good track. And now we just have to figure out which of these 5 maybe, or what's the next step? Do we try something like these, or do whatever? So somebody gets some courage from the marketing department, and they reach down on the floor and pick one up, and it's this white package with just a very gestural, simple icon of in this case a file folder. It was for file maker, and they said, "What about this one?" And then the CEO says, "Oh, well, that's just too crazy. I mean, that doesn't look corporate. That doesn't look this whatever." And then he says something smart. He says, "Yeah, but look how different it is. Nobody does anything like this." He said, "Wouldn't it be funny if this one turned out to be amazing, and it outsold all the others?" And then he turns to me. He says, "Well, can we test these?" And at this point, I'd never tested anything really. So I said, of course, we're going to test. We've got that in the plan. We're going to test them. And he said, well, can we test this one also? Just to see if we're crazy or not. I said, why not? So we tested them in many stores, mostly in Silicon Valley. And the results were unanimous almost that this crazy one, even though it didn't look corporate, looked so Apple, so confident, so fun that it just outshone every other software package on the shelf.
Wow.
And to their credit, they had the guts to try it on one, and then that worked, and then they kept trying it. We did pretty soon did the entire line of 15 products in that same style. So I became a real believer in testing because really nobody was ready to stand up and say that one is the winner because it was just risky, right? So that's the beauty of testing things. It takes risk out of making a decision because if CEOs are very risk averse, and if you show them something different, they'll acknowledge that it's different, and then they'll say, "Yeah, that's the problem. It's different. Who else has
Yeah.
done
Yeah.
this? Who
And
else has
then
done
once
this?" You
something's
say,
successful, they all copy it, don't they?
yeah, they all copy it. And I say, no, you don't want what everybody else has been successful with. That's how they got successful. You want to be like them. You want and do something that's never been done before. So I'm always having to make that argument. It just goes against human nature because we all learn from copying other people. We if we like something, we want to see more of it, or we want to do some of that. So that's where the zag comes in. And I think it was around that time that I started using that word with clients, saying, when everybody zigs, you have to zag.
I
That's
love
why
it.
Apple had that success. Because once Apple did it, that opened the floodgates, and everybody wanted to do that sort of thing. And I said, well, you have to be willing to do something that's never been done before, because that's what Apple does over and over, time and again. So, so Apple, I owe a lot to Apple for being my guinea
I
pig.
think it's probably a reciprocal relationship.
I hope.
It is. It is. Hey, Marty, you said before that you don't buy brands, you join them. That's a
Mm-hmm.
powerful statement. Now, one might think that an obvious example would be a favorite musician or even a product like automobiles, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so are heroes in life like Dr. King, and a lot of people mourned him upon his passing even though they never met him, right? They felt
Yes.
connected to him and continue
Yes.
to feel connected today. The question may be a bit philosophical, but do you think it's innate to human nature to seek tribes, or whether this could possibly just be a negative that comes from a materialistic and consumer driven culture, or a culture that's seeking to find a home?
I think it just comes straight out of what we are as humans. I just think we've always needed to cooperate with each other. We need everybody's help, and we have to reciprocate by helping them. We also feel safer when we see someone else do something first.
Hmm.
You know, the first hunter who went out and killed a mastodon by himself, that was probably like, everyone else was backing up and he's running out to it with a spear or something. But when they
Yeah, in
saw how he,
athletics, it happens all the time, doesn't it? We celebrate somebody for being the first, this first, and then all of a sudden, everybody else is.
yeah, we celebrate them, but not right away. First, we make fun of them. So take Picasso, with his idea about cubism, everybody just made fun of it incessantly at the time. I mean, maybe the women with three noses and stuff like that. They couldn't see anything beyond that. It wasn't a realistic portrait of somebody. So, I mean, you'll get that a similar thing in sports and all in business, every place, where if it doesn't match the expected version of it, you make fun of it. But if it also is good, right, different and good, eventually you stop making fun of it, and then becomes the standard, and everybody has to copy you. So when you hear the word, I'm losing my, I'm old now. That's the problem. nouns Nouns are the first thing to go. Okay, disruption. I've heard disruptions, and I've actually promoted it so many times that I can't, now it's invisible to me. So disruption is actually, in my definition, when you do something so different that it changes an industry and makes everybody copy you just to survive, or,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
or deal with you. They have to
yeah,
change their business so that they
yeah.
can compete with you, because you've pulled the rug out from under the whole category.
Like refrigeration did to the Iceman, right?
Well,
The guy,
yes,
the guy who used to drive around delivering ice,
yes.
knew all the kids, and The horse knew the route. And then one morning, the lady down the street got a refrigerator, and it completely changed the game.
I actually have insight into that, even though I'm not quite that old.
Uh huh.
My grandfather was in the refrigeration business when it started,
Mm,
one of the first companies.
uh huh.
And so it was difficult because everyone did have their icebox. The icebox was made out of
Yeah.
oak,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it was a box, and it sat under your counter, and there's a place for a giant ice cube,
Uh huh.
like
Uh
12
huh.
inches by 12 inches
Uh
by
huh.
12 inches. And it would stay in its ice form for maybe 3 days or something. But, the Iceman would come and replace it. So nobody was really saying, I wish there was a refrigerator, right? Someone had to invent it and make a case for it. And at first it didn't work because people said, well, your refrigerator is very nice and all,
Hmm.
but I do have this ice box, this very lovely ice box under the sink already. So I don't think I need the refrigerator. And so what my grandfather's company did is they said, well, you have to go where the audience is. So they went, we will convert your ice box into a non-ice box, iceless box. What? You won't have to get that ice anymore. You can say goodbye to being there for the Iceman, or, leaving the door open while you're doing your errands. You don't have to do that. You just plug it in and it's iceless. And so they started out by putting a motor in the back of every one of these, a refrigeration
Wow.
unit attached to your icebox. And then after that, that opened the door for full size refrigerators, because, keeping up with the Joneses ensured that people will want the
Yeah.
biggest and best. Yeah. So that's funny you mentioned that, because I remember my grandfather telling me that. I just thought that was so interesting about people, that they can't just make that leap from icebox to refrigerator,
Yeah.
electric refrigerator. They have to have a step in between.
And it completely changed the game.
Oh,
But
completely.
the idea of brand courage is intriguing from a seller perspective as well. How do you think leaders can cultivate this trait to make bold decisions that resonate with their audiences, their customers, their employees, while aligning with their brand's values? And I quote values. I put it in quote.
Yeah, I mean, you want to be consistent. You want to dance with the person who brung you, right? I mean, you can't start out as one thing in business and then switch to some other line of business, because everyone's scratching their heads and going, "Well, what happened to them?" They don't trust you after that because you've told them you were one thing and then you became something else. If you can do that, but keep in mind that you've given up that other business alone, you're never going to get it back. You're
Oh,
really halfway starting over. So
oh wow,
that's
that's
what's
so
happening
important.
with Twitter and X, I think,
Yeah.
is, you rename something like that and change it. You lose a lot of the equity of that original business. You make a lot of people unhappy, but you don't have a free hand. You're not starting over with something that's good from scratch. You're using something, you're building on something old. So it's a very difficult thing to do, and I'm sure it would be somewhat successful, but probably not as successful.
That's powerful information you just shared there. That's really smart. And Marty, this may tie in with that. You've spoken about vulnerability and its role in effective leadership. Can you elaborate a little bit on how vulnerability can enhance creativity, leadership, and perhaps ultimately contribute to an organization's success?
I don't know if I talk about vulnerability very much, but it sounds
Hmm.
like something I would talk about if I had thought
Hmm.
about it. I mean,
Hmm. You've
certainly
spoken about it. You've spoken
I
about it.
probably have. Well, if
Yeah.
we're talking about leaders in companies making bold moves, to me, this has been kind of the main problem I've been trying to crack since I've been doing branding for
Hmm.
20 years, 25 years now, is that leaders see their job as to mitigate risk. They don't want to be the one that, not on my watch are you going
Hmm.
to,
Hmm.
make a
Hmm.
make a move so bold that you just, like, we lose the whole company. We're not going to bet the
Hmm.
farm. And that makes sense. But the problem is, if you also know that you have to innovate to succeed, you have to outmaneuver the competition, those, now you're in conflict with yourself. You're trying to be safe, but you're trying to do something that's never been done, because that's the nature of innovation. Is it can't be something that other people are doing. That's not innovation. That's copying. Innovation is original. It's, in a sense, it's uncopyable until someone figures out how to do it. So that is where a lot of leaders get stuck, is they go, well, I want to do something different, but I want to know that someone else has done it. So
Right, right.
what happens is they start making little decisions during the design process that bring it back to something they understand and they think is safe. And in doing that, all the life goes out of it, and then it doesn't work as an innovation, because it's pretty much just like what somebody else did, but a different color or more speed, or whatever it is, or it's smaller, something like that, something that's not really enough to change an industry. So the way to get around that is through design prototyping. It's an iterative process where you start from a new place, you come up with an idea that nobody's doing, you find the white space out there in the world, and you imagine something that could work in that space that would also come straight out of who you are and what you do, right? The problem is nobody's done it before, so it's risky. And so if you've got investors and so forth, you start to pull back from that, and you don't ever take the risk. So what you do is you use prototyping. You come up with some ideas that have never been seen before, never been done before, never been tried. You test them with the likely audience for it. You learn from that. You go back, design some more, and you keep doing that round after round until you've got something that hasn't lost its newness or its originality, but from talking to people that it's solving real problems for them, and that it'll be something that's good and different. You can get a pretty good read on that before you ever sink big money into manufacturing the product or designing the service. And so that's something that is not in the vocabulary of management. Management has never been taught how to work with designers or to think like designers. They
Or
think about,
especially smaller businesses, because you think about it, so many of our family listening now may have their own ideas about starting their businesses, and prototyping would be really important for them. But branding can be overlooked, or even misbranding can occur for a lot of startups and small and established businesses. Marty, what advice do you give to startups or local enterprises looking to build strong brand presence on limited resources?
yeah, limited resources are not a problem. They may become a problem as you start to scale up, because you need money to do that. But
Hmm.
it's not about spending money. It's about design. And what most people get wrong when they're starting a business is they think about it from their point of view more than the customer's point of view. They think about, how can we build this product? How do we market it? How do we distribute it? What are the profit margins? Who do we have to beat in the marketplace? But it's all really about them, instead of thinking about customers and what they need, and listening to customers equally as well as you listen to your own needs. So I think that that's a mistake that a lot of companies make. They think about branding as something you do later. Once we have the product, once we know, we have the distribution, then we'll brand it. Well, branding has to come straight out of the intention of the business from the very beginning. It's a day one thing. It's a chicken and egg. Between business and branding, which one comes first? Well, we're going to put the business first. Okay, then how do you know you're going to have a good brand? Well, okay. Well, we'll put the brand first. Well, then how do you know you're going to make money from that idea? You have to do both together, and they talk to each other, the business and the brand, but they have to start at the same time. You can't tack a brand on at the end. And that's how we got our idea of branding, is that it was always tacked on. It was always like, we got the product, let's come up with a name, let's come up with a logo, and we'll call that the brand. And then we'll advertise it like crazy. And it worked because times were simpler back in 1950 or something. So, but now it doesn't. You have to have the right product for the right audience from day one if you want a business. I mean, why would you even contemplate starting a business if you don't know who your customers are, how, what they need, how you're going to drive them crazy with anticipation for the next product, the next one. You have to know who they are. You have to have them in mind before you even build your business plan. And so that's something that a lot of companies get wrong. So you have Elon Musk now, he's taken over Twitter. All that original work has been done by somebody else. And I think they did do it correctly. They started with the customer in mind,
Right.
and they built it together. Now he's got this thing that's already built, and he's going to tack his identity onto it. The Musk identity is going to my beloved X is going on to this. Maybe it'll work, but I wouldn't say it's optimizing the discipline of branding. I would say if it's successful, it'll be in spite of branding, not because of branding.
Rebranding is really, really has really a science underneath it that I think hasn't been explored as much as you're teaching it now. And you think about it, Marty, because like some financial companies fail, but what they do is they simply rename and then continue correcting errors. Or like in my own industry, think about it. Companies acknowledge shifts and changes in society. Kelly Girl just became Kelly Services. Manpower has still to play with that name of Manpower. How does a company rebrand smartly?
Well, it's not easy, is it? I mean, you have to think of it from many angles. I would say also prototyping helps. You can find out how it's going to play in society by trying it out quietly off Broadway.
Didn't Coca-Cola do that with some of its launches where it took the bottle shape, I think, for a couple of rides, and then it also tried Coca-Cola different flavors adding to it, but they come back to
They're always testing, always trying new things. Usually just around the margins, nothing like serious. It's too big of a company to take those kind of risks. Companies have life cycles. When they get really big, they tend not to invent very many things themselves. They look for companies to buy, and they have trouble growing. At a certain size, they can't. They're just trying to maintain it.
When you're one of the best known brands in the world, how do you envision the future of branding? Hey, Marty, how do you envision the future of branding in a globalized world where markets are becoming increasingly interconnected?
Well, it's always about differentiation. I will tell you that. That will never go away. Differentiation, luckily for us entrepreneurs, is free. It just takes the vision and courage to do it, right? But you also have to have a set of principles to work with, and I've tried to outline those in my books. You can do it. Everyone can do it. It just usually is counterintuitive, and I think that's the problem people have with branding. It's kind of like, to be a great ballet dancer, you have to learn how to dance on your toes. That's not natural, but it looks fantastic. It looks amazing.
And it looks easy and light, doesn't it?
And that's the whole illusion of dancing is lightness, right? It's an illusion. Yeah. And so with branding, you're creating this illusion, but it's in the service of something very real. So, and it's difficult. You have to get all these different people to pull in the same direction. Everyone in the company and your customers have to pull in the same direction. You want them to a certain extent to be part of your company. They should have a bit of a voice in it. You should be listening to them. You should, you shouldn't have a wall where, those are customers. We don't listen to them. They just buy what we have. They're nothing. We don't need them. No, you need them. In fact, you don't have a company without customers. So as a brand person, I would always start with customers rather than so much what I want to do. I would say, what does the world need that I can do and enjoy doing? What does the world need? What's not being done?
Back to John Kennedy, because America is a brand too. We are a brand.
It is. Yeah, and our brand is suffering. Where America needs to be rebranded.
In the eyes of the customer. In the eyes of the customer, right?
Yeah. Well, who's the customer?
Who's the customer?
I would say, in a big sense, the customer is the rest of the world. and the people in the U.S. are employees who also are part of a brand. They're the important part. But we all, we have our individual needs and everything. But I think the what's happening with the USA brand is that we've kind of lived beyond the usefulness of the previous product, the previous brand. It's the idea that we started with is no longer working. And this goes for the whole world. The idea that resources are free, all that wood, all those trees, all that water, all that air is just free. It'll never go away. And we can just throw trash in the ocean. And it's just so big, we don't have to worry about it. Oh, and by the way, we can shoot stuff into space and never have to collect it. Let somebody else do that later. So we're starting to see the effects of that, which is accelerating these bad effects that we've been getting. And we have to change. And I think I've been thinking about this a lot in terms of branding and in terms of business. How does business behave differently if everything has to change? Well, one thing that has to change in business is that we can't expect forever growth. Everybody's talking about growth hacking, growth this, growth that. It's become a thing right at the time when, guess what? It's not going to be easy to grow. Growth is not going to be, it's just not going to be a viable goal for anybody. Growth in the sense that we know it now is just killing us. It's creating, pollution and trash everywhere, and we're fouling our nests. So we have to think about business differently. And so it's a very interesting question that
You're going into some really uncharted territory there when you talk about is growth going to be the goal of a business? I'm paraphrasing here.
Yeah.
That's uncharted territory.
It is uncharted, and I don't know what to tell you. I'm just saying I'm sharing that this is a big concern of mine because I think I've been telling everybody, well, branding is great for growth, and it is.
Yeah, you have.
What happens if you can't grow? What happens if growth becomes too expensive? What happens if growth is damaging to the commons, this world that we live in? So,
well, what are your thoughts around AI generated design and how AI is playing into growth?
Well, AI is going to be like somebody said, like dropping an atomic bomb. Not necessarily all bad. It's not all destruction, but I'm worried that we're unleashing the power of AI at a time when a lot of things we're doing are bad for us. And AI is great for speeding that up. Right? So let's say 10,000 years, we've been on the same track since the agricultural age. That's when we started farming. We started making more food than we could eat, right? We're making it, right? And then we're selling it. We learned how to do math, and everyone had to learn how to write language. All this happened 10,000 years ago, and we've been on that path ever since. All we're doing is getting more and more sophisticated until we ended up with technology that's so smart it can simulate human thinking in some ways. So fine, except that the 10,000-year trajectory has brought us face to face with our own demise. Like, if we keep going like this, we're not going to have a world we can live in. And it's all because of basically industry.
So, Marty, are you selling doom and gloom here? Half of America may celebrate you, and the other half may, off with its head.
I think I want to sell that idea to people because it's, first of all, we resist. It's like a lot of things that I've encountered in life. People resist new ideas, and one new idea is, we're digging our own graves. Nobody wants to hear that. And we all just rather ignore that, right? And because then we have no responsibility for changing.
Right,
and we've been doing it for 10,000 years. Everything we know, our language, our history, everything is based on this growth. And now we're finding out that growth could actually be the end of us. And then along comes something that really allows a lot of growth. And it allows us to do a lot of the bad things we're doing now, which is to create a huge division in society between the very rich and the very poor. That's going to just get worse. We don't really need that right now. We don't need to make more things because AI is allowing us to invent more things more quickly. That's not going to help us either. And of course, there are optimists who will say, yeah, but AI can help solve all of our, ecological problems and so forth. And it could, but that's not who we are. We're about making money as as cheap as we can.
So is there paradox in what you're telling me right now?
Yes, that's a very good way to capture that. It's a paradox. And so paradoxes are like, oh, we're stuck. It's catch-22, we're stuck. But most scientists will tell you when you encounter a paradox, you're off to the races. That's when you get excited, right? You got to resolve that paradox. And so I think we can do it. But our motivations, our impulses are all going in the wrong direction. And so along comes AI with no guardrails so far. And everybody I know just about is like doing something in AI because they see immediate money from this, immediate success. They're not thinking about, is this going to be good for society? They're going, me, me, me. Well, that's another thing that may have to change. Me, me, me may have to go away if
But
we're going
that's
to be
toothpaste out of the tube, isn't it? We built a whole system, capitalist, geo-governmental system
all
on
about you take care of yourself and it'll be good for everybody.
And the legacy idea of growth, right?
And growth is part of that. So growth is nice. It's simple. It's easy to understand. We all know the idea of more. We're really good at adding. We're not very good at subtracting. People just love to add more and more stuff. They complicate their lives really easily. They hardly ever simplify their lives. So that's just humans. So what is it going to take for us to reverse, or not necessarily reverse, but change a 10,000-year course that we've been on?
Wow.
I don't know what it's going to take, but I know it's going to take design. It's going to take some people with imagination. They're going to try things. They're going to have some success with it. Other people will copy it, so forth. But it's going to be an amazing, 50 years. Let's just say. I think it might take that long.
If we can get there before the Big Bang, right?
If we can get there before it's too late. And that's what the AI people are worried about. It's like what are we unleashing on the world? I mean, I'm not doing anything wrong. It's those guys. It's that company. It's not Meta. It's Google.
I'm just doing a little bit, right? Like being a little bit pregnant.
Yeah, a little bit pregnant. So Google had this idea that they were going to withhold AI for a long time until it's really safe, and they're going to let it out of the box little by little until Microsoft did it. And then they got now their shareholders want them some action. They're going to have to let theirs out of the box too. And the competition starts, and all the corner cutting starts, and all the damage.
Being left out, right?
Yeah. So I think it's overall, it's probably in the short term, it's bad news, but in the long term, it could be good news. But I think the secret to transforming ourselves is going to be design, which is something that most people don't have any experience with, is the processes of design. Only designers. And they're not used to working on world-sized problems, right? I can design a logo for you. I'm not sure if I can design clean air, right? So that, I think this is our big challenge. I've been actually writing about this since 2012. But it's going to take more than one person. It's going to take a lot of people. So I noticed you had Kevin Kelly on your show.
Yeah.
I pay attention to him a lot. And I love to see.
It's so funny you brought him up, because I was sitting here thinking, wow, I should have Marty and Kevin and this one other person I'm thinking about, and have all three of you come on and just have this conversation.
Oh my God! Well, I'd be left in the dust, but I would love to to get in there and compete.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
I
let's do
think,
it.
yeah. I mean, he's amazing, and I don't always agree with him because he's coming from a very specific place. But I
Hmm.
always find him interesting, thoughtful, and he has the ability to change. He's
Well,
not
let's
stuck.
do it. Let's do it. Let's do it.
Okay.
Let's have that conversation. I'll invite you to it. This conversation has just simply been amazing. Are you ready to go 4 for 4 with me?
4 for 4. What is that?
Okay, so
Have we
I'm going
done
to
three
ask
for
you.
three?
We're going 4 for 4. I'm going to ask
Okay.
you 4 questions to which you'll give me
Oh,
4 answers to each. No answers are wrong because they're your answers. My thinking is they're going to enlighten our family and going to leave us on some very rich information from you.
I don't think I
Okay?
could come up with 4 answers for anything, but let's try it.
Go for it. Go for it. First question. Marty, you get to invite 4 people to dinner from any point in history through today, who have lived at any point in history through today.
Oh,
Who's at
gee.
your table and why?
Leonardo would be, because I've just written a book with him as the centerpiece, a fiction book,
Uh-huh.
but I've done a lot of research on it, and I want to find out if my assumptions are correct, if he's the kind of person I think he is,
Wow.
and it would be I'd be delighted to find out I was wrong too, but I think
Mm.
he would be super interesting. Um, let's see who else. I always liked Ray Bradbury.
Ah,
I thought he's a
I
beautiful
think he
writer.
got banned in schools, didn't he?
I want to be banned.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
Part of your
hoping.
conversation here may not hit you too.
I hope to get banned in one of my books someday because it's like that's a guarantee of success. And you're making a difference, right? If it upsets a few people. Ray, I actually met him once, and I think he would be a delightful,
Dinner.
positive person to have at dinner.
Mm.
And let's see
Two
who
more.
else. 2 more.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say in the writing thing because I've been doing a lot of writing lately. Elizabeth Bowen,
Uh-huh.
who's a short story writer
Right.
from Ireland.
Yeah.
She's long gone, but I remember I used to read a lot of short stories, and hers really stuck with me in ways that I can't even identify why they did. I mean, they're just they reach emotions that other stories can't reach. You
Hmm.
know,
Hmm.
so she would be great, and then maybe Marie Curie, just because I
Oh,
think she'd have to be very interesting.
Madame. Mm.
Yeah, she
Wonderful.
she died from radium
Yeah.
because they didn't know that it was dangerous to be around radioactive substances, and she had a tube of it that she kept in her jacket, and it burned her skin, and
Yeah.
probably eventually it killed her. But
Yeah.
so
What a dinner, though. Wow. What a dinner. And you kind of balanced it out on so many levels with such explosive people. That's another paradox.
well, it's
um,
fun to have people from different different times, different genders,
yeah.
different
Different schools.
different schools, different ways of thinking about the world.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love that. I love that. I'm gonna help you serve that dinner so I can listen in. Um, Music. What 4 pieces of music are you listening to and why?
Oh, well, I was really into music in the '70s, like a lot of my brethren. And being a white guy, I was I sort of came from the Bob Dylan,
Yeah,
Woody Guthrie school in the beginning. So
yeah.
folk music, it was something you could learn to play, even if you weren't terribly adept at music. And so I picked up a guitar and I started learning that. And
Oh my
then
goodness! Now I want you to serenade me, but keep going. Okay,
oh
okay.
no, no, I can't sing anymore.
Ah,
I can't play. No, you don't.
ah.
Don't ask. Can't dance. Don't ask me. But that led me into that whole LA singer songwriter scene with Joni Mitchell and the Eagles and Jackson Brown
Ooh,
and also the whole Beatles revolution was going on at the same time, and I related to those people a lot, and I started writing songs, and I had a group, and we had promises of recording, record contracts, and I almost made it to the Monkees.
Mm,
I'm not sure that would have been healthy for me, but I tried out for the Monkees when I
wow.
was in art school, and I thought, I decided after the audition, I just said that was one of the worst experiences I've ever had. It was so impersonal. I don't even want to be in that business, and I gave up that whole dream of writing songs and making albums, and just focused completely on design. And then
And now the
many
business
years,
is so different, you can do it. It's
I
right,
probably could, but
right
no,
from that
you
desk.
know, some yes, you could, but art takes focus, and you can't focus on everything. You have to decide. I think I can't do everything. But I switched to design. But 30 years later, when I was 50, in my early 50s, I got a phone call
Hmm.
from a company that's making a documentary on the Monkees. And I said, really? People are interested in the Monkees? Oh no, yes, they're making a comeback. People really appreciating the music, which was written by Carole King and all kind, Neil Diamond and a lot of people.
Oh my God, I
Uh,
love them. I love them.
because 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 the Monkees couldn't write songs, not enough of them. So, but they were looking for people who could write songs. And when I went to the audition, I played a song, and they said, "Did you write that?" And I said, "Yes." "Do you have any more that you've written?" I did a couple more, so that was it. They cut me off in the middle of each one, just a little of each, and they said, "Okay,
Uh-huh.
we'll let you know." And then I knew that there's not, that was it for me. So 50 years later, or 30 years later, I'm in my 50s. I get this call, and we're doing a documentary on the Monkees,
Uh-huh.
and we want to know if you want to be in the documentary as one of the runners up. And I said, "What do you mean runners up? There's like 200 people in that line that night that I went to the auditions." And they said, "Yeah, but you were right at the top." And I said, "What do you mean at the top?" They said, "Well, you were number 2." And I went, like, I couldn't believe it. I said I was that close to being a monkey, and I never knew it, and I could have been. And then what? What my whole my life flashed before my eyes. Uh, so isn't it funny? So I wasn't that far from doing something with music, and I just decided it wasn't happening, and I went to the thing that I had
Mm,
always wanted to do, and it worked out fine. But
mm, mm.
what if I'd become a monkey? Who knows what?
Marty,
This is
look,
stupid.
let's just be clear. Let's just be clear, okay? I'm a straight shooter. Let's just be clear. Wherever you would have landed, the world would have won. I'm glad you landed where you
Oh,
did, but I
Janice.
still want you to serenade me. We don't have to do it on this podcast, but we're going to connect and you're going to serenade me, or at least read some of your songs.
Oh yeah, I think I might have a book of lyrics and chords. I
Yeah,
couldn't even write music back then,
yeah.
but I loved it, and I just thought what a life that would be. But looking back and seeing what happened to a lot of people in that business, it's probably wouldn't have been a great thing. I'm very happy now. I have a good life.
Mm,
So,
mm, mm. Well, I
but
love your
anyway,
playlist so far as you've mentioned it. I love it. Okay. Um,
well,
so let's go three for four. What four books do you recommend to our family, and why that they read?
Well, it's hard to recommend books for people because they have very specific things they like, and they only have so much
Yeah,
time, and books are time consuming.
yeah, yeah.
But I can tell you which books I've read in the last few years that I thought were important. Whether you want to read them is something else. One is called, I hope to get the name right. It's called Surveillance Capitalism by
Mm-hmm.
Shoshana Zuboff, Zuboff. And I think it's probably one of the most important books of the decade. And
Wow.
it's well written. Yeah. And it's all about social media. So surveillance is basically what's been happening. And that's where AI is going, more of that, basically, because the AI can figure out what you're likely to do, what you can be made to do better than humans. And companies are going to, they're doing what the science tells them to do. And they not only know what tribe you're joining, we're talking about tribes,
Mm-hmm.
you join a tribe for your dish soap. You don't join a tribe for the car that you buy, the computer that you buy, what kind of dog you like. If you're a horse person, what kind of horse you would buy. Those are all little tribes that we join. They can not only figure out what tribe you're in and who else is in that tribe, they can put you in another tribe. They can introduce you to a tribe and make it seem attractive enough to seduce you into it for their benefit and for their advertisers' benefit. So, it's the common saying, and it's true, is that social media has turned us into the products. We're the products. The social media is free. We don't know what we're giving up. We have no idea of the value of what we've given them. We've given them this free resource. It's like saying, guess what? Everyone can cut down every tree in the world right now. You're free to do it and make whatever money you can from it. And no one said, well, what about the trees? Who's going to talk for this? Who's going to speak for the trees? Nobody. And that's the way it was. And now it's human intelligence, basically. It's human emotion. They can find out how we make our decisions and sell that to somebody else. I don't think it's good. And so Shoshana is really good at explaining that in detail, how our behavioral data is being used. So I think that's important. If you don't have the appetite or the time for a long book, Jaron Lanier has the sort of Kickstarter guide for that. It's real short. It's like a quarter of an inch thick. I think it's called something like 10 Reasons You Should Quit All Your Social Media accounts right now. Something like that. Lanier, Lanier. That book has the same argument, just written in a more casual way. And he's got a lot of credibility because he started VR, basically. Virtual reality was he promoted it in the beginning. He was instrumental in bringing it around. And now he's saying, stay away from all that stuff. It's bad. So that's interesting. So that's one book or one type of book. Let's see. What else is good?
2 more.
Well, 3, actually. I consider those one, but
Okay.
Kevin Kelly. Read a Kevin Kelly book.
Yeah,
Read The Inevitable. Yeah, read The Inevitable or one of his earlier ones. He's still way ahead of his time. Very good stuff. I used to read Alvin Toffler, who's a bit like Kevin Kelly, but more philosophical. I think his way of thinking about the world, even if it's not new anymore, is really worthwhile reading. So his books are Future Shock and The Third Wave. When I read The Third Wave, it changed me to the point where I moved to Silicon Valley. Basically, when I read that, I went, man, this is probably for the same reason people are getting into moving places so they can get involved in AI. They're just going, wow, I can see it. This is very important. But of course, AI is way more dangerous than the personal computer. Let's see, what else is good? I've been reading a lot of fiction lately, so it doesn't really maybe count for this audience. But let me think. Oh, good book. Influenced me a lot. It's called What Do You Want Your Customers to Become?
Ooh.
Or Who Do You Want Your Customers to Become?
Oh, I haven't heard of that one.
Yeah, it's all about what I've been doing and what I'm talking about. He's just got it down to he's just made it so clear. And basically it's saying you need to think about what you're doing for customers and what dreams are you making come true for them? How are you enabling them to be the person they need to become? Because if you can figure that out and do it honestly, you've got a business that's going to last 2 lifetimes. I mean,
I was talking with a friend of mine who belongs to a circle of friends, and she reached out to us, and she's got a product, and it's a product that addresses self-testing for breast cancer, right? And she reached out, and the first thing she said was, guys, I have been thinking, so many people in her circle have died of breast cancer, men and women, right? And she said, I've just been thinking, maybe the reason I'm thinking on this is I'm supposed to do something about it. And the something about it she wants to do, Marty, is to create an opportunity for us all to be able to self check a little, as regularly. And you
Yeah,
get where I'm going with it. Yeah.
yeah. I
And I
think it's
thought of her when
that's
you said, what do you want your customers to become? She wants us to become, champions of our own health.
there you go. And that thing you want them to become doesn't have to be the thing that makes you different. You can there could be
Yeah.
100 companies doing the same thing. That's got
Yeah.
nothing to do
Yeah.
with it. You have to personally be passionate about that when you start your
Yeah.
company,
Yeah. Yeah.
because you're going to need that passion
Yeah.
to get through all the hurdles and everything. Yeah. So that's
Wow.
a really good book.
Wow. Wow. That's some good reading too. And Nathan and Sarah can tell you, I go back and I get the book. So I think I'm going to be busy. Um, let's go 4 for 4. You said you wanted 3 for 3. Look at how well you're doing. Let's go 4 for 4.
Okay.
Marty, 4 pieces of advice that you consider the best advice you could offer in a wide arena. And if it's advice that was given you or that you learned from someone else, please pay homage to the author of the advice.
Oh, okay. Well, one thing I learned when I was in, I can't credit the person because I don't even know who said it. I was just
Okay.
walking up a flight of stairs at my art school, and I heard one student talking to the other. I was probably in my first year or something, and any advice was, really interesting to me. He said, I always, with any kind of homework or any kind of design project, I like to figure out something that's very simple to achieve and then kill myself doing the best possible job. Instead of, let's pick the hardest thing and see if we can get through it, right? And then do a crappy job, probably. He says, I like to take something simple that will work a million ways and figure out how to make that work in the best way. And then I know I'm going to have time and I can go on and live to fight another day. And I thought, yeah, I've been doing that ever since. So,
Love it.
if I come up with a ton of different ideas for any kind of project, I will go for the one that looks like it's going to be the easiest, but also has a lot of has legs. It could go this way
Hmm.
or this way or this way, and then I can have fun seeing what I can do with it. But don't take something that's like so hard that everything has to be perfect or it won't work. So I'm actually working with a group of people. I won't tell you who they are because it'll affect my future. But they want to do something disruptive in their industry, and they figured out a plan to do like 18 disruptions that are all united into one idea that will actually, if they could do it, would put them way ahead of everybody else in their industry. Problem is that even getting one disruption right is a lot of work.
Yeah, I
Getting
was going to ask
18
you,
to work,
isn't that counterproductive to or counter to the advice you just gave?
and it is, and I've told them before. I said I admire your ambition, but in my experience, uh, it's better to tackle things one at a time and focus everything you've got on one thing before you do the next one. It doesn't mean you can't have an ambitious plan that has all those things in it, but see if you can be successful with the easiest one first. If that
Mm,
doesn't go well, I think, otherwise you're going to be juggling all these things that have to work perfectly, and some of them won't work at all. Some of them will work badly. Some of them will cost way more than you thought. You're going to just have to borrow tons of money or get investment from so many people, and ultimately let them down if you're not successful. So I think always, as an entrepreneur, pick something really dumb, really simple, really different that will make somebody's life better. See if you can do that one thing in a way that nobody else is doing it. And then, but in the back of your mind, you can say, yeah, and if that works, maybe we can branch this way, we can branch that way. Have
mhm,
some runway, some places you
mhm.
can go, but just focus on that one thing and pick the thing that's going to cost the least amount of money to be successful. And always test before you do it. Don't sink a lot of money into making something and then find out My question is like, if we sink all this money into it and it doesn't work, where are we with that? And if my answer to that is, it just has to work. I know it'll work. I'm already in trouble because there's no way you can predict whether something is going to work in the real world. It's too complicated. You have to use imagination, have a hunch, test it, improve it, put it out there, change it. It's just a lot of iteration to get it right. And hopefully at the same time, you're always making it more different, not more the same, because then you face the risk of having competitors.
Yeah. You got to have faith in it, right?
Well, you have to have faith in it, but faith alone can get you into big trouble.
Yeah, you got to keep moving it too.
You have to have passion for it, I would say.
Passion.
And then you have to have objectivity about your rate of success, so that you don't tell yourself you're doing better than you will. I mean, I've done that. I speak from experience. I mean,
actually, that's a strong piece of advice right there. Having objectivity, and about your rate of success.
Yeah, and I think it helps, again, to talk with customers, talk with clients, whoever, the audience, to find out what they think, keeping in mind that they may change their mind. Just like with the Aeron chair, if you ask people if they like the Aeron chair when it was just a prototype, they would say, it's the ugliest thing I've ever seen. I would never have that in my office. And then 2 years later, they got all they have is Aeron chair.
Everybody's cool, right?
Yeah, everybody has to be cool. It's the Aeron tribe, and you just have to be part of it.
Oh,
yeah. So there's that, and then maybe a piece of advice I would give myself, and I'm not sure how sound it is, but to be really successful at anything, it's going to take you 10 years. People know that now. It may take you 20, but let's say you want to be a great pop artist, as I wanted to be. It's going to take you 10 years of doing the wrong thing, getting with the wrong people, failing before you suddenly have an overnight success. It's going to be the same thing if you're an author like I am now. It's going to take you 10 years of writing bad stuff or mediocre stuff before, probably, if you're going to be good, it'll probably be bad, not mediocre. Because if you're mediocre, you'll probably never get out of that mediocre trap. You'll just always be mediocre. But if your destiny is to be really a great artist of any kind, even a business artist, a CEO or something, you're going to make some bad mistakes in the beginning, and you're going to have to figure out your art. Whatever your art is, you've got to figure that out. And it's going to probably take you 10 years of constant effort to be an overnight success. So I wish...
Well, you better keep the world safe for us for 10 years.
Well, yes, that's the other thing.
You better keep us around for 10 years.
Are we going to have a world in 10 years? No, don't start despairing. It's, we're going to get through this. Keep in mind that all this bad stuff that we're going to be facing, all this hardship, is also opportunity. And the more hardship, the more opportunity. There's going to be so many businesses based on saving the planet. I mean, you can't believe how, and I think some of the richest people ever in the history of the world are going to come out of this saving the world thing, saving the planet thing, and not necessarily for the good. That we have a lot of super rich people.
I knew you were wrapped in optimism. I knew it.
Optimism is no good unless you are pessimistic too. You have to have both sides, right? You have to have the darkness. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you're just going to make mistake after mistake. But at the same time, you don't want to just despair because you're either too optimistic and you're embittered because it never works out, or just because you never think it's going to work out, so you never try. That's the worst thing. You have to.
Well, you talked earlier about the yin and the yang of things, didn't you?
Yeah. I think you need both. Mm. Yeah. So I'm writing novels now, partly because I think I can get across the finer points of anything better in a novel than I can in a straight ahead nonfiction book. For me, it works, but I wish I had started 10 years earlier.
Yeah, but you got stuff all over the place. Well, I don't want to refine you. I don't want to confine you to one place, but what's the thing, should the earth survive beyond you, that you want us to know about you being here?
Oh, I don't know. I think I would want people to say, He tried to bring art to industry, into our gray world. He tried to unleash people's artistic, destinies, and we all have it. But there's not a lot of opportunity for being an artist in everything you do. But now I think there is, if we can get beyond the idea that everything is really about money and power, sheer money and power. Mm-hmm. So I think if making money is at the top of your list, I hope it's only temporary, because you do have times when it has to be at the top of your list. Mm-hmm. And I think second place is a good place to put. Second or third place is a good place to have that. You can't do without money to support yourself in the system we have now. So you can't just move that down to number 10. Otherwise, you're going to be miserable. Mm-hmm. But if you make it number 1, there better be something about that that's good for people and good for you. Because I don't find that a lot. I find that I know a lot of billionaires, through my work. Mm-hmm. My daughter works with billionaires all the time. She's a yacht chef, and she has a lot of, and I hear her stories, and they're even worse than mine.
Oh my goodness, she must have them.
you don't want to wish that on anybody. You don't want to wish to be a billionaire. You certainly don't want to admire someone who is. Mm. It's not a great. It's in a sense, it's a sign that you're not a completely healthy person. If this is what you think is important.
Wait a minute. So hitting the lottery may not be the best thing.
That'd be the worst. You know why? Because you have no experience with money. I mean, if you didn't have any money and suddenly you make billions of dollars, you're like starting from zero. I mean, it's taken me all my life to know how to just
So how do you define success? How do you define success? You know that I love Earl Nightingale. Success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. How do you define success? That's
nice. I think it's getting better at something you love, feeling successful at something you want to do.
Getting better at
and everybody should have something, something that's special to them. In the old days, it was people realized you couldn't just do whatever you want and make enough money to survive. So you have to have your day job, and then you have your regular job, or you have your hobby. And that was a big deal for hundreds of years, is having a hobby. But some of us are lucky enough to make their hobby their actual work. I was one of those people. And I think other people can do it too. If you're really clever, it depends on what you want to do.
Or if you're just a great student. I mean, you've given us a lot of definition and a lot of guidance around how we can do that from where we are right now. It ain't like, okay, we didn't start there, so we can't get there.
Yeah, and I'm great with just having a hobby or several hobbies, in addition to doing something that with very little effort you could make enough money to support you the rest of your life. I'm fine with that. I chose not to do that because I was lucky enough to be in a artistic kind of track.
Yeah.
And I could manage to do both. But let's say I wanted to be a fine artist. Now that's something where you want to start early. It takes you 10, 20 years.
I don't know. How early is early?
Well, I would say in your 20s,
they say
you
Grandma
want to start.
Moses started a little bit later than early, right?
I don't know her history. I think she started later, but maybe she didn't reach that much success when she was alive either. I don't know for sure.
Yeah, good.
but you'd like that to happen. I mean, so I'm writing novels that I think will help people understand what's possible in life. I don't expect them to be successful in my lifetime. I expect them to have a modest amount of success, but if they're really good, I expect them to peak much later. So you think about books like
this is a big question, and I know I'm just Marty. So listen, I just love talking with you. Okay, I'm going to ask you the big question. You can come back and answer another time if you don't want to do right now. What's wrong with the world? What's right with the world? I feel safe asking you that because I believe I can trust the answer.
Oh, it's the answer is the same. We're human. I mean, it's the same for both. We're human, and that's a problem. We're human, and that's great.
Yeah.
Because we're human, we are attuned with the beauty all around us. In the sense, we've been formed. We've been formed by evolution to appreciate all the beauty and just to enjoy our lives. And I think the people who enjoy it most are the ones who propagate most, right? So I think it's nature's way of making more people, is to make sure those people are really happy. But at the same time, as humans, we have all kinds of failings. We're greedy, we're afraid, we're too much afraid, all that kind of stuff. And it leads us to justify a lot of bad behavior. So I would say those two things. But in terms of just the stuff out there that's bad, I mean, I think the fact that we look like we're heading into an extinction event is probably the worst thing. It's probably worse than just about anything you can imagine, because
For humans.
Well, and for trees, little bugs, animals. I mean, everything is going to have to adjust. I'm not worried for the planet. I'm not imagining a dead planet. I'm imagining a place where humans and many animals can no longer live. I'm not interested in that subject at all. Naturally, I just see that this is going to be a big problem for all of us. So the things we worry about, like politics and inequality and all kind of, poverty and things like that, all are subordinate to this bigger problem. I mean, we need to address that, and all these other problems need to be part of that solution for the bigger problem. We need to figure out how we're going to get the world on an even keel where everything's healthy. And I think it really can't happen unless we solve these other problems anyway. We have to solve the political problem. We have to solve inequality. All that, we're not going to solve it without doing those. So if we just focus on the big problems, this is something I'm toying with my next novel. But the more I think about it, the more I think, yeah, duh, is we're probably going to have to reinvent religion. So religion was actually a big help 5,000 years ago or 1,000 years ago. It's not such a big help now. It's actually leading us in directions that are not helpful, because it's just the wrong religion, right? People need to believe in something. They need to hang out together. They need to have a moral code, all those things that religion brings. So the problem is that we know too much to sort of like put a lot of faith in that older idea. If it works for you, great, but I see it not working for a lot of people. It worked for my mother, who is a wonderful person, and I think she would credit her religion.
I was going to ask you, if it works, because it doesn't work for some people, does that make it wrong, or does it just mean that those people are outside of where it can help them now?
Yeah, I think
You're talking to
so
a
individualized.
Bible Belt girl here,
No, I think we have to. We don't want to let go of the awe, AWE, that we feel about the world, and religion gives that to some people. I don't need that to feel awe. I feel like the more I understand about the world, the more amazing I think it is. I don't have to believe in anything metaphysical. I think the physical is way beyond my comprehension already. I would like to know how it works. But on the other hand, I'm not a scientist, so I'm not going to get very far on my own. I will just be a spectator, But
if you're a very good little boy, you'll go to heaven, and then you can ask God.
I feel like that isn't going to happen. And I feel like
you're not going to be a very good little boy. So you're not going to be a very good little boy.
I won't be. That's definitely true. I haven't been, and I won't be. But I think, God is something that we invented to do something for us. And the more I study, because I love reading about religion, I think it's the most fascinating thing about people. So, but that's only led me to think, well, we told ourselves this amazingly rich story that really helped us, It helped us get where we are, and now look where we are. We're not in a good place. So whatever we were doing, we can't keep doing that, right? And that includes everything, almost everything. So I'm thinking that, 10 years ago, I would have said, if religion went away tomorrow, I think we'd probably survive it. I think some people might go crazy, but
religion ain't going away from me, Marty.
Well, it's not going away. That's the thing, because people need it. And I think that's the secret of religion. People need it. So if you didn't need religion, you wouldn't even pay attention to it. You ask any atheist and they'll say, I just don't feel like I need it. It's not that I'm not interested in it. I don't feel the need for it. So what is that need about? That's super interesting. And I think it's that religion gives you something like 4 things.
Now we got another conversation we got to have, and we got to talk about
I've taken it in the wrong direction, definitely.
We're going to... I'm looking forward to talking with you more, whether we do it on podcasts or just on FaceTime, Marty.
It seems like it's mixing church and state. We're talking about branding, but I think there's a... Brand lives within a society, and society is affected hugely by what we believe, right? And apparently humans have to believe in stuff. If we didn't
That's
believe
all
in
right.
stuff,
I'm going to get my mama on you because she's better than I am at
no.
this. I'm going to get my mama
I'll be
on
going
you.
to church now.
Yeah,
like
I'm going to
every
get my
night.
mama on you, Marty.
Oh,
okay.
God. No, if my mom couldn't do it, nobody could. She was wonderful. I came from a really solid...
Was your mom a Southern Christian lady?
She was from Southern Illinois, so just above Kentucky.
Okay.
Right. And she came from a religious household. My father came from a religious household. They're both Catholics. We went to church a lot. Sometimes they'd go every day. Like they'd get up early in the morning, and we got to go to good schools, got to learn how to write. Catholic school's very good for that.
Look at all in your life. You know what? I'm not even going to argue with you about God right now. I'm just going to tell you that you and I are going to have this conversation. And
you can't argue with me about God. I don't argue about God.
I'm not going to argue with you about God. No, I
don't do that.
I'm not
no, there's no reason, but there is a reason to explore it.
Yeah,
and it's super interesting.
And I do love your mind and your openness to not just create, because I won't say anybody can create a question or create a challenge, but a lot of people do. But where you take it toward the thought about how would you solve that, how would you solution that, for me that's just so brilliant, and I do enjoy that about you. And now that I've actually had this conversation with you, I'm hungry and I want more, so thank you.
Well, we're going to have that dinner, right, with Leonardo.
Yeah.
And I did a lot of research on Leonardo, and a lot of people don't know he was an atheist.
Yeah, we're going to have that.
Because he did all those pictures, from, the Last Supper and, all the religious. But I wouldn't necessarily say he didn't believe anything. He believed in nature. And that's why I think it's super interesting, because I think we need to start believing in nature.
Well, sometimes you get confused
if you want to call it God,
too.
Yeah, I mean, yes. You have to pay attention to that.
Well, tonight I will pray for you, Marty.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
In the meantime, from my heart to your home, thank you.
Janice, this has been so much fun. Let's do it again.
What did I tell you? This ain't work. This is fun, Marty. This is fun. And I don't even want to hang up, but we gotta.
All right.
But we'll only hang up with the promise that we're going to connect again, right?
Okay. I promise.
Okay.
All right.